Many people in the anti-gun community, including Joe Biden, like to suggest that small arms and an armed citizenry is no match for modern government, that there's no way for armed citizens with small arms today to thwart tyranny given the size of the governments around the world. But is this really true? Stay tuned. Hey folks, I'm Mark Smith, host of the Four Boxes Diner, constitutional attorney, member of the United States Supreme Court Bar, and proud American gun owner. If you haven't subscribed to the Four Boxes Diner, please do so and show your love for the Second Amendment's right to keep and bear arms. All right, so we keep hearing comments from people like Joe Biden and many other Democratic politicians and other people that don't like guns, and it goes like this. Well, we know that at one point in time, the Second Amendment was supposed to be about thwarting tyranny. That's what the Founding Fathers thought it was all about. But the reality is, this is not possible in the modern world, because unless you have an F-16 or unless you have an Abrams tank or nuclear weapons, there's no way that small arms and armed citizens could possibly thwart tyrannical governments in the modern life. Well, is this really true? Well, I submit that it's probably not true at all. And I just want to give you a few historical examples to illustrate my point. To begin with, let's just start in recent history before we go back to the 18th century. In recent history, we know what happened in Afghanistan. We saw it on video. We saw it on TV. So what happened there? Well, the United States government decided to leave billions upon billions of dollars worth of weaponry and materials and things with military applications in Afghanistan when we pulled out. And what happened? Those weapons were supposed to be, in theory, left for the Afghanistan government to protect themselves against, among others, the Taliban. Well, guess what happened? We know what happened. The tragic story is that the Taliban, armed as best I can tell, with nothing more than AK-47 rifles and some old pickup trucks, drove around the country and captured billions and billions of dollars worth of firearms, weaponry, and military equipment, all with AK-47s and small trucks. Well, that's an example of small arms and an earnest group of people being able to take on a larger government and capture their equipment and their items. Terrible situation in Afghanistan, but it's not our doing. We can ask Joe Biden how that worked out for him. But let's go back and talk about history, because here at the Four Boxes Diner, we like to talk about history to give you historical examples that you can use with any of your friends, including the so-called intellectuals of the planet, to really be the smartest person in the room when it comes to the Second Amendment, which is my goal for you, that you know more about the Second Amendment and its history than anybody else in any room in which you are hanging out. So let's go back to 1775, to the Battle of Fort Ticonderoga. Right? This is kind of the start of the American Revolution, and there's two military leaders for the Americans, Benedict Arnold, that's right, Benedict Arnold the traitor, wasn't a traitor, he was originally an American supporter, so Benedict Arnold and Ethan Allen. Ethan Allen, of course, is from what we would call today Vermont. So Ethan Allen and Benedict Arnold go to Fort Ticonderoga. I think they had about 100 men and some muskets and rifles and whatnot, small arms, and what did they do? They captured Fort Ticonderoga using small arms and some earnest men. And what did they capture at Fort Ticonderoga? Well, they captured cannon and all sorts of military artillery pieces. And what did they do with those? So those men used small arms, captured the artillery pieces, captured the cannon, and they brought them down with them from Fort Ticonderoga to Boston, where these military pieces, these artillery pieces and cannon were used both in the siege of Boston and also to fight the British at the Battle of Bunker Hill. So the lesson here is small arms, armed citizens are able to capture bigger military pieces, artillery weapons and whatnot, bigger weapons that can then be used to protect, in that case, American liberty against the British invaders or the British Tories, if you will. But this is not the only example of this. Let's come up into a little bit more modern times. Let's talk about World War II. Now, it's a very interesting story, and there's a debate about how much this was actually done and effectuated. A little bit of historical debate about here, but the theory is sound. What happened was in World War II, as you probably recall, the Nazis, run by Adolf Hitler, and Germany invaded many countries in Europe, including France. So during World War II, France was an occupied territory. The Germans occupied France, as we know. But there were resistance fighters throughout France, people that wanted to take out the Nazis. Many were French and many were other countries as well, or in there as well. So there was a gun that was invented called the Liberator. Now, you gun historians out there know this story quite well, probably much better than even I know it. But this firearm is very important for you to know. If you want to be sophisticated in the Second Amendment, you should Google and take a look at the notion of the Liberator gun in World War II. Well, the Liberator gun was this. It was a single shot. I repeat, it was a single shot pistol. And what was the purpose of the single-shot pistol called the Liberator? The idea was that the Allied forces would often fly over France in their planes, and they would drop materials that would allow the French resistance to fight the Germans in France. And the idea was, among some of the other things that they would drop into France, would be these single-shot Liberator firearms. Well, of course, what would Joe Biden say? He would say, what's the point of a single-shot Liberator pistol against the Nazi war machine? How can this possibly make a difference? Well, our Allied forces and American generals knew exactly how this would work because they were smart. They understood that if you drop these single-shot Liberators into France and the French resistance grab these guns off the ground, they could go and with a single shot kill a Nazi soldier and take the Nazi soldier's firearms and weapons and ammunition. So a single-shot Liberator pistol dropped by the Americans, by the Allied forces into France, would allow the French resistance to take these pistols and shoot and kill Nazi soldiers and capture their equipment. Again, an example of a small arm being used to thwart a bigger, more influential, richer, more resource-filled enemy. Now, we all know the famous quote, which I've given to you many times, by the former federal judge, Alex Kaczynski of the Ninth Circuit. Now, Judge Kaczynski, of course, is famous for this quote. I'll put it down below because I think it's so important. He says that the Second Amendment is a doomsday provision, one designed for those exceptionally rare circumstances where all the other rights have failed. However improbable these contingencies may seem today, this is what Judge Kaczynski wrote, facing them unprepared is a mistake that a free people get to make only once. So again, I think that contrary to people that say that armed citizenry with just small arms is not capable of thwarting tyranny, are not recognizing the lessons of Judge Kaczynski, and they're not recognizing the lessons of Fort Ticonderoga or the Liberator pistol in World War II. All of these are examples, including what happened with the Taliban in Afghanistan, of small forces with small arms being able to thwart a bigger and greater enemy in various ways. And again, hopefully we never reach the point of a doomsday scenario here in the United States. But again, the idea behind the Second Amendment is to discourage and deter anybody that has tyrannical designs on the country, whether it be foreign invaders that want to come into this country and take us over, or domestic insurrections or whatnot. This is all the things that our founding fathers worried about. And of course, the Second Amendment is also designed for self-defense against criminals, terrorists, and even animals. All of this was discussed in detail at the time of the writing of the Second Amendment and the founding of our great country, the United States. Okay, I hope you learned a little bit something here today at the Four Boxes Diner. Please subscribe, and we'll see you again soon here at the Four Boxes Diner.
Orders up. Table 2A.